Welcome to this event on Finland and hydrogen. My name is Anu Partanen and I will be moderating this discussion today. This event continues the discussion started by the report Finland and the hydrogen economy. Viewers can find this report. There's a link underneath the agenda above the streaming window where you're watching this, and you can download the report from there. The report is a product of cooperation between 5 leading Finnish companies: Fortum, Gasum, Toyota Auto Finland, UPM Energy and Wärtsilä. Today we have panelists from those companies here with us, as well as a few extra special guest stars. First, a few words to the audience. You can participate in the conversation by writing comments and questions on the chat window that you can see below this streaming window. I will bring those questions to our panelists here later during the course of the conversation, but please feel free to keep those questions coming all through the conversation. But to start the event, I'd like to invite one of those extra special guest stars on stage to say a few words. Jorma Ollila, Chairman of the Board, Nordic West Office. Welcome.
Thank you, Anu, and good morning, dear friends and colleagues. So, I came across hydrogen first in 2008 when I had just started as the chairman of the board of Royal Dutch Shell, and we were working on a long-term strategy for transport fuels and what does an oil company need to do in the 20-30 year period to face the challenges. And we first ran into the strategy of the transport companies, vehicle companies, where the Japanese, with Toyota as a clear lead, had articulated as their strategy that they will see, in 2008, they saw the biofuels and electric vehicles being 2 transitory ways of building the needs or satisfying the needs of both passenger vehicles, cars, as well as trucks and other such vehicles. But long-term solution would be fuel cell, i.e. hydrogen. Fuel cell was very much the buzzword at the time. And this was really interesting, which I had not come across before. Toyota has been very consistent with their strategy, which they had at the time until today and continue to be. Clearly, they saw already then in 2008 that the biofuels have a problem with the food chain. And the electric vehicles, they felt that the battery technology is not satisfactory, and that there will be a conflict with access to adequate materials if the demand for transport continues to grow as everybody expected at the time. So. Hydrogen has a reasonably long history, much longer than we would perceive today. And one must say that the report, the Hydrogen of Finland, is really an important and timely. The hydrogen will have a key role going forward. And the question about how can we build a hydrogen ecosystem which will serve the industries that will need not only transport, passenger cars, but also other parts of the energy system. So to build a hydrogen ecosystem is really the challenge. Perhaps the one note I would make about going forward is that perhaps here, more than any other area of energy system, the Nordic cooperation would really be welcome. There are a number of issues which we need to tackle, and Finland being a reasonably small country, we would really benefit in working together with the Nordic countries. There are other examples of future energy solutions where Nordic cooperation would have been well justified. The battery solutions, the building a viable battery industry clearly is one, but it has not been really possible to work together with the other Nordic countries. It would really be great if we could look at alternatives of bringing resources and intelligence from the Nordic countries together in this area. But with this comment, really many thanks for the companies and individuals involved in bringing this discussion paper, which I'm sure will be a real wake-up call in Finland and lead into a concrete discussion on how to go forward. And I'm sure there will be a good discussion this morning to look at the steps thereby. With that, I'm happy to open the seminar, and over to you, Anu.
Thank you, Jorma. Now I'd like to invite to the stage our first two speakers. We'll discuss first a little bit the international context and the big picture of hydrogen, and after that we'll have more panelists joining. Welcome, Esko, Chairman of the Board, former Prime Minister of Finland, and Markus Rauramo, President and CEO of Fortum. You can start with Esko. Esko, welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me to join this webinar. My interest in hydrogen started with SSAB. I looked at the case of Rahe, and I was surprised how little interest public opinion and media had in the project, and especially when the company decided that it will faster make things faster than predicted. If they had decided to postpone that, I'm sure that we have had a lot of discussion about responsibility of the company to do something for the climate. But when the company decided that it will do or transfer from coal into hydrogen faster than planned, no one was interested in that. So I started to learn what's going on in that area. And then an Italian consulting company, European House Ambrosetti, invited me to join one project around hydrogen. In that project, they analyzed together with mainly Italian major companies and business representatives, what is the potential of hydrogen in Italy? What Italy can do? And I recognize actually that we have a rather similar situation in the other end of Europe. If in the south they are analyzing that hydrogen is giving them a new comparative advantage if used in an efficient way, and they can combine solar and hydrogen in a nice way together, producing solar in North Africa and combining that into the hydrogen infrastructure in Italy, they can create a new comparative advantage for Italian economy and especially industrial production in Italy. And I assume that in the same way we have potential here in the north with wind, especially with wind, combining combining wind and hydrogen together. Then a couple of comments on the potential of hydrogen. We have been speaking about black swans a lot in recent months because of this COVID virus. And when we speak about black swans, we have traditionally negative things in our mind. We believe that Taleb's metaphor of black swan works well when something goes wrong, when something unpredictable happens, something which has huge impact, and what we can explain afterwards that actually it was predictable and quite easy to understand why it happened. But we can use the same metaphor for positive things as well. And we have seen that in Europe, and especially here in the northern part of Europe, with mobile phones and mobile technology in the 1990s. Jorma Ollila knows that better than anyone else. And that was a black swan. Something extraordinary happened. It had massive impact in the economy and society. And afterwards, it was rather easy to explain why mobile solutions took that kind of role and why that kind of revolution took place. I can see similarity with mobile and hydrogen, in the sense that for the first, we need an ecosystem in order to get things to happen fast, and that ecosystem requires a lot of different kind of things: investments in science and technology, a lot of risk-taking capacity, infrastructure investments, logistics. It requires regulatory efforts as well, and you need also new type of strategic leadership in order to get things to happen fast. That's why I like the idea that Finland should have a clear strategy what to do in the field of hydrogen. You cannot go on taking individual steps in different sectors, but you have to have a concerted effort in this area. And secondly, you cannot be expert in everything. You have to be able to collaborate. And I can see that the first step could be taken here in the Northern Europe. I think some kind of Nordic effort done simultaneously with local national efforts will be welcomed. And secondly, the European Union has rather ambitious plans as well, and a lot of resources to be used. I think that this Green Deal and urgent need for recovery programs, that is a good combination for our own efforts as well. And finally, I think there are indications that with hydrogen, potentially something like what has happened with wind and solar can be repeated. I was in the board of Fortum more than 10 years ago, and we analyzed what is the potential of solar and wind. And final conclusion typically was, yes, they are fantastic ideas, but it will take more than 20 years before they play any major role. If you look back what has happened within the last 10 years, and wind together have been growing globally roughly 16% or more than 16% annually. And they play a major role in many countries already now. So everything happens faster if and when we can scale. And I think scaling is the critical question with hydrogen as well. As soon as scaling is going to happen, then also prices will come down and business potential for hydrogen will grow. That's why I'm optimistic that something positive will happen much faster than what we expect today. And final, I have learned in some critical situation that you have three alternatives to make transformation rapidly. You have to put in front of you three questions. What is that which will remain? What we are going to stay to do in the future as well? Secondly, what we have to stop doing. But finally, what we have to start doing. And I think until now, this climate change discussion and environmental discussion, sustainability discussion, has put a lot of efforts in these two questions: what to continue to do and what stop to do. But most critical question is, what should we start to do? And I think hydrogen is something which is a great opportunity to solve environmental or meet the environmental challenges in an efficient way, much more massive way than what we expect today. Thank you, Anu, and I will return back to you.
Perfect start. Markus, Fortum released an updated strategy just last week, and in this strategy, Fortum is placing significant emphasis on hydrogen. So what does hydrogen mean for Fortum?
Yes, just checking. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. Okay, so this is what we have been all going through now with Teams and Zoom and everything else for almost the whole year, and still we can't solve it. Maybe I take one step back still to the big picture question, that why hydrogen overall. Now I'll come back to Fortum's part, but hydrogen can and probably will solve a huge existential problem. The second point is that hydrogen will be huge, and I'll explain why. And then just a small disclaimer, this will take time, and the reason why we need to talk about hydrogen now is that hydrogen is, for me, like renewables were 10 years ago, something that we knew how to do, but it will take time to scale it up to be commercially competitive. The background, as I see it, for hydrogen is that climate change has been recognized as our biggest target. It's the existential threat to us all, and that's why EU, for example, and the whole Paris Agreement targets carbon neutrality in 2050, and that means that we need to clean electricity. It means that we need to clean gas, and we need to clean all other sectors. In Europe, we are driving down now with really fast pace coal, lignite, big parts of nuclear. And that means that there will be hundreds of gigawatts, meaning hundreds of billions of euros investment needed into clean energy. And that will mostly be intermittent energy, solar and wind. That's good, we get a lot of clean energy, but then we need to also solve the intermittency and the storage issue. The other leg is that gas is even bigger than electricity. Europe is using about 5,000 terawatt hours of gas. That's equivalent to 10 times the Nordic electricity consumption. Electricity has to be cleaned, gas has to be cleaned. It's just a massive opportunity. Then there are sectors that are difficult to clean up directly via electrification, like heating, industry, transport, that was referred to earlier. And hydrogen actually enables cleaning up also these sectors. It enables the sector coupling. With clean energy, we can produce clean gases, clean hydrogen, and then transform that into traffic fuels. We can use it in industry. And gas has much bigger potential also for transporting overall. It's much more efficient to move gas than to move electricity. We have seen how difficult that is. The final point for me, why hydrogen now, is that what I just said, I think has been politically and societally very strongly recognized. So countries, people are agreeing that we will and we have to and we will fight climate change, and we need to clean all sectors. And now countries like Germany, France, Spain, the whole EU, Portugal have pledged billions of euros into hydrogen economy, because that is the key to cleaning up the sectors. That is why we need to be all now very awake, because the next 10, 15 years will be the time of scaling up the hydrogen economy. We'll be scaling up electrolysis, transport, storage, the use of hydrogen. And the question is, what kind of a role do we want to take there? Again, I see that this is a 10, 10-15 year path, and you need to project yourself 10 years from now. What do you want to be then, and now take action. With regards to Fortum, with the acquisition of Uniper, we became actually the third largest CO2-free producer of electricity in Europe, third largest. So that puts us in a great position for the clean electricity. We also have a multi-gigawatt scale renewable pipeline already. So we are in that ecosystem. But with Uniper, we also became one of Europe's largest gas suppliers. Again, 5,000 terawatt hours in total, European gas consumption. It's a 100 billion euro business annually. That needs to be cleaned up. We have 400 terawatt hours of long-term gas contracts now with Uniper. So we are close to 10% of the European consumption. Our traded volume is 2,000 terawatt hours. And that's what shows on our P&L nowadays. Our gas storages are 70 terawatt hours roughly. So that's equivalent to the whole Finnish electricity consumption. So we are in a great position to participate in the gas transition and take a position in hydrogen, because we can originate clean gases from the current suppliers, and we have the customers who need to clean up their gas. We have stakes in pipelines, we have the storages, we have the trading experience. So we are in a pole position both for the clean electricity and clean gases, and we have the transitional fuel also to bridge this change when coal, lignite, and big parts of nuclear are being driven down. So big opportunity has to be done. Now there's political conviction that it will be done. There's stimulus. Now we need to be awake. The next 10 years will be decisive. Which companies, which countries take a pole position here. The role for Finland could be that we have space. We have good conditions for renewables. We also have a lot of clean water. So we could actually become a meaningful supplier of clean energy for Europe. And if we transform that to clean gas, actually the possibility to export clean energy or export our knowledge and clean resources would be really significant. And then of course technology. So this transformation will require tens of billions of investments into technology. And of course, we have companies here today and who have been part of doing the report that are energy technology and infrastructure technology suppliers. So it's a big opportunity for Finland. It's an opportunity for us to take. Thank you, Anu.
So you mentioned, and we've talked already here about how much is happening in Europe. The European Union has created an ambitious hydrogen strategy. Many different countries, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, have actually written their own national hydrogen strategies. And if you look at European news about hydrogen, there's hydrogen plants being built, there's plans for new pipelines. But in Finland, so far, the discussion has been quite muted. You mentioned that you see great opportunities for Finland in exports and so on. But do you think Finland needs hydrogen less? Is that why we're not talking about it, or have we just not quite woken up to it yet?
We're not the gas economy, so it's not something we talk in the breakfast table at home. We know electricity, we know forest industry, we know steel, we know heavy manufacturing, but gas is not a big business, because we have had the luxurious position of having good hydropower resources, good biomass resources. We have made wise investments in the past in nuclear, and we've had a good, very distributed energy palette, and our dependency on gas has been very low. That's why we are not so much actively talking about it. If you take something like a Germany, half of the electricity production will be taken down in a matter of a few years. And then on top of that, you need to transform the car industry. You need to transform the gas. So it is something that political establishment has to talk about, because it's really a question of how will the country survive. I think we're more in a position that we can take the opportunity, but we have less of the downside.
Excellent. Well, now we are discussing. So let's bring our other panelist to join us on this discussion. Welcome, everyone. We have with us Johanna Lamminen, CEO of Gasum. We have Heikki Freund, President and CEO of Toyota Auto Finland. We have Tapio Korpeinen, Chief Financial Officer at UPM 10 and Executive Vice President, UPM Energy. And Kari Hietanen, Executive Vice President, Corporate Relations and Legal Affairs, Wärtsilä. Welcome all. Let's start by doing a quick round of each of you stating what your company's or industry's interests in hydrogen are. But first, just to preface the question and for our audience, I'd like to list a few of the major applications of hydrogen in case in the audience there are some people who haven't really followed as much hydrogen conversation. So first of all, hydrogen is already used in various industrial processes in Finland as well. It's a main ingredient in ammonia production. It's used in oil refining, in biofuels refining. And so one question is that this hydrogen that we currently use is produced typically with fossil fuels, natural gas, and we would need to make that green hydrogen. So that's one aspect. Hydrogen, as Markus mentioned earlier, it could be a carrier and storage of renewable energy. We could use it to store solar or wind power to be used later. It could be a completely new tool for decarbonizing some industrial processes. In Finland, we've talked mostly about the steel production, where it could replace coking coal in the production itself. It could be a direct fuel for cars and trucks and ships, airplanes. This is probably the aspect that most people know most about. It could be a synthetic fuel ingredient. So we could take hydrogen and we could take carbon from air, carbon dioxide, or a factory chimney, put them together and create a new synthetic fuel that would recycle carbon instead of producing new carbon. And finally, as Markus mentioned, it could help in decarbonizing gas heating, which we don't talk about so much in Finland, but which is a really big market and issue in Europe. Okay, with that, let's do a round. Johanna, what does hydrogen mean for Gasum and your industry?
Thank you, Anu, and great to be in this program as well. And it's been very interesting to be participating to writing this paper as well. And I guess that it's also important that there is lots of discussion about the hydrogen at the moment, and we are of course at Gasum following that very much as well. Like Markus, you said, some of us are more in gas and some of us are lesser in gas here in Nordics, and our business obviously is around the gas, and you know, we are very much following closely the discussion around the fuels, that how hydrogen can be used more in fuels, and how can we produce more synthetic methane. And why do we see, as discussed already, that why the synthetic methane is so important? Because we have the gas infrastructure here in the Nordics already. We have gas engines for heavy-duty vehicles. We have LNG and liquefied gas infrastructure already in place as well, and we can utilize the same infrastructure when distributing synthetic methane. And that's the development that we are also very much keen on following, and I think that Gasum will have a significant role to play when we are talking about particularly synthetic fuels.
Thank you, Johanna. Heikki Freund, Toyota was already mentioned here today as a leader in hydrogen vehicles. Where are you now?
Yes, good morning, Anu, and thank you for the opportunity to join the discussion today and being part of the report. As Jorma in the introduction mentioned, hydrogen is nothing new to Toyota, and it's been part of Toyota's journey since quite some time ago. As a leading global car manufacturer, Toyota's primary interest, but not only interest, but probably responsibility and a vision is to be creating a mobility solutions for hydrogen economies and societies. So it's about the mobility. And as many know, the most visible part of that has been the first mass market fuel cell technology passenger car, which is the Mirai. But it also extends to many other applications. This year, Toyota has announced several global initiatives expanding to bus and truck production with various partners. So in other words, Toyota is truly preparing to become a mass provider of hydrogen-based technologies for all types of mobility platforms. So of course, passenger cars being the most visible, but fuel cell stacks and hydrogen components to be used in all kinds of mobility and transportation. So that I think clearly explains the interest and the role of Toyota today and going into the future.
Thank you, Heikki. Tapio Korpeinen, what about UPM and UPM Energy?
Yes, thanks, Anna, and good morning to everyone online as well. A couple of quick points to give you an idea. First, hydrogen in industrial scale is part of UPM already today. We both produce and use hydrogen, for instance, today in our refinery in Lappeenranta producing renewable fuels, or in about 2 years' time in Loina producing biochemicals. Then second point is that this energy transition is very much part of UPM as well. We are a large producer of zero carbon electricity and advanced renewable fuels, and we are growing in both areas, so replacing fossils. And then third, we are a large consumer of gas as well, and in the future it can be, at least in part, hydrogen, it can be synthetic gases as well. So we are committed to this 1.5 degree scenario of the United Nations. We are committed to reduce our own CO2 emissions by 65% by 2030. We are innovating products and materials to replace fossils, so hydrogen actually can play a role in both parts in terms of reducing industrial emissions for ourselves and then for this new sort of solutions for replacing fossils.
Thank you, Tapio. And Kari Hietanen, what about Wärtsilä?
First of all, good morning to everybody from my side, and thank you for the invitation. At Wärtsilä, we are looking at green hydrogen with great interest, and we are looking at that from the technology perspective. I think hydrogen can play an important role in our products in the future. And in fact, fuel flexibility is already today a major success factor of our engines. So we are looking at developing that with the view of using hydrogen-based fuels in the future. But I think it's good to look at the different markets separately because they are a bit different. If you think about the marine market and shipping, 85% of the world trade is seaborne, so it's transported by ships. The big question is how to decarbonize shipping. The next step is certainly moving to LNG, but what then? Batteries could be used for short distances in the future, not for long routes, or certainly not for ocean-going ships. So what's the solution? We need for them actually zero carbon shipping is zero carbon fuels, and here green hydrogen or actually synthetic fuels, more probably ammonia, methanol, they are likely to play an important role. So in the future, Wärtsilä technology will power shipping with different types of fuels, but with the engine technology. If you think about the energy side, Markus Rauramo already described the electricity situation and mentioned also the intermittency of the renewables. The variations are today supported by Wärtsilä flexible power plants using natural gas. But if we jump into the future and think about a situation where we have maximum amount of renewables, we have batteries, we have interconnections and so on, I think not 100% of the demand will be satisfied. We still need something to take care of the windless weeks and rainy seasons and so on. And there again, hydrogen-based synthetic fuels will be an interesting solution. Using our technology, we will be able to make sure that lights are on also in all kind of situations as far as the energy markets are concerned. So in both areas, we are looking at this from our technology perspective, also looking at the holistic technology needs, and I believe there will be good use cases for hydrogen and hydrogen-based fuels in the future for us, and that's why we are actually already actively working on the technology development.
Thank you. Let's move and discuss a little bit hydrogen's opportunities for Finland, which have been somewhat mentioned, and challenges, which is what we Finns like to focus on. Just a note to the panelists, if you want to comment on something that somebody else said, you can just do the old-fashioned thing and raise your hand, and I will see you and I will give you a turn to speak. But let's stop a little bit. We've already discussed the question of electricity. So obviously the big question in hydrogen, one of the big questions is that to produce hydrogen from water, which is how we produce it without using fossil fuels, we need a lot of energy, and that energy, of course, should be fossil-free. Now we are planning to electrify our society overall, and on top of that, if we add hydrogen, hydrogen is partly a solution for storing that energy, but partly, in a sense, part of a problem because we need more energy to produce the hydrogen. Tapio, Korpeinen, I feel like there's different opinions about whether we have, for example, in Finland or in the Nordics already enough fossil-free electricity production, or are we looking at massive increase of windmills or other solutions? What do you think?
Well, I would say that this sort of zero carbon power generation or decarbonizing the power generation system is perhaps no longer the bottleneck as such. The power generation system here in Finland and Nordic as well is decarbonizing itself as we speak on a market base. So that is taking place, and I would say also here in the Nordic countries, and again in Finland in particular, that is obviously driven by renewables, but also nuclear, hydro as well, and all these forms of generating emission-free electricity, they are needed and are part of, let's say, getting to carbon neutrality, not only also here in other parts in the world as well, China, for instance. So we should, in my mind, sort of, when thinking then about hydrogen, not only link it to renewables, but rather to the emission-free power generation as a whole. And hydrogen, as has been mentioned here a few times already, can play a role in terms of energy storage, in terms of energy carrier, in terms of helping decarbonize industrial processes, which can be, let's say, even a bigger challenge. And for that, I think then here in Finland we have, let's say, today and especially growing into the future, all forms of emission-free electricity available. And that's in a sense that we should sort of link together, not only to renewables like wind and solar, which is important, but hydro and nuclear as well.
So one challenge that often comes up is that hydrogen is a light gas. It's not very energy dense. It's sort of hard to handle, or it can be hard to handle. Regardless, especially in Europe, there are already all kinds of plans, as was mentioned here earlier already. I think Esko mentioned that we could produce hydrogen in Morocco with solar power, and we would have a pipeline that would bring it through Greece and Italy all the way, bring that hydrogen to Germany. And then one aspect could be that here in the Nordics, we could use our renewable and fossil-free energy sources and produce perhaps hydrogen or synthetic fuels and transport them elsewhere. Johanna Lamminen, what do you think of that? Is that actually realistic? Because often when you talk to experts, they say that, well, look, you can't just put hydrogen into an existing gas grid. It doesn't work. It's difficult to handle. You need new tankers and new kinds of trucks and whatnot.
Yes, very good question. And actually, if you right now would inject some hydrogen on the gas grid, obviously it does go there, but you never know where it comes out, pops out from the system. But I would say that I think we should think about also the energy system and from the cost point of view. And we have already such a massive infrastructure for methane, for natural gas. And then comes the question that how much can we afford additional infrastructure and how much should we utilize the present infrastructure? And I think that the hydrogen is an excellent, it is a future and it's an excellent thing and excellent topic that we discuss it right now. But I would be kind of like challenging us to go all the way by adding the carbon into that as well and produce synthetic methane out of that. We have the LNG, we have the natural gas infrastructure, we have the storages, we have pipelines, we have already Wärtsilä's great engines that the maritime is using. We have Volvo, Scania, and other OEMs are developing the gas-fueled engines for long-haul transportation. And I think that we should be more kind of like ambitious by also going all the way to the synthetic methane and utilize that infrastructure we already have.
Okay, let's discuss next steps for Finland, either the Finnish government, what should they do, and Finnish companies, what should they or you all do, and then maybe even investors, how should they think about this going forward? Markus, Rauramo, what do you think the next steps for Finland, concrete next steps should be?
Listening also to the colleagues here, I would put my eyes actually to Europe and to the world. So the opportunity is massive. Like I said, 5,000 terawatt hours of gas used in Europe. That's 75 to 100 billion euros. So the question is, as historically for Finland, that being an export-oriented country, how can you be successful and relevant as a technology supplier or product supplier to the world? And both the innovation and the competitiveness will be very important for us. I would say it's a 10-year path. So I put myself back to 2013, 2014, when we in Fortum we were kind of revamping up our renewables efforts when we saw that maybe this is actually becoming commercially viable, not only tariff driven. And we started with acquiring on the solar side a 5 megawatt plant in India, 5 megawatts, really tiny. And that was a really hard decision because we thought hard about is this a business we want to do and what are the risks and so on. In a couple of years, we scaled up to building a 10 megawatt plant, 70 megawatt plant, and now we're building 250 megawatt plants and have a good process for that. I think that's what's going to happen in hydrogen as well. So now is the time to plant the seeds. So you just need to go with many alternatives, get to understand the play. If you want to scale up to 1 billion, then you need to do the 10 million or multi-tens of millions of investment now to even understand. And that is what we are doing in Fortum. So we are looking across our value chain. How are the pipelines? How much hydrogen can they take? Where are the hydrogen sources? How can our capacities, gas-fired generation capacities, how can they become compatible with clean gases and hydrogen included? But I think in innovation technology following now really taking this seriously because it is a massive issue. It will be solved. It will be tens, if not hundreds of billions of investment opportunities. So the question is, what kind of a role do we want to take as a technology supplier? And Finland needs to think about its competitiveness. Does it want to be a player but not only in Finland, but actually in the world.
So Kari Hietanen raising a hand. Go ahead, Kari.
Yes, thank you. Just adding to what has been said, I think it is very important to have a system view from the whole country and the world, and certainly from the EU point of view. It's about production, it's about the volumes as has been discussed, it's about the cost development of the technologies and the production, it's about use, and it's about the development of the technologies for the use. And here the infrastructure, as mentioned by Johanna, is I think extremely important. Even if the synthetic green hydrogen-based fuel is always going to be more expensive, there's still a huge saving of the infrastructure. If you think of a ship and the bunkering systems, which are now made for natural gas, synthetic gases can be used as such there. But if you invest in new infrastructure based on hydrogen, of course, it is a new investment. Same goes for transportation, storage, and so on. So looking at the total infrastructure investment needs, I think is a very important point in this. Then what should we do? I think one important thing is to start understanding what the future hydrogen economy can actually mean and start piloting. I think we at Wärtsilä, we have a number of projects ongoing where we do pre-studies or trying to understand how the systems, how the technologies should be developed, how they work together, what the cost development will be. So I think we need to start to act. That's my view.
Johanna is raising a hand. I wanted to ask Heikki, though, just a brief question, because obviously the cars and trucks and ships and all that is the most visible part. And here in Finland, we don't yet have any filling stations for hydrogen cars or whatnot. And I think Toyota just this past, if I understand, this week brought to the market the new generation Mirai. What do you think should happen for hydrogen vehicles to actually have a presence in the Nordic countries and in Finland in particular?
Well, thank you, Anu. The realism of offering Mirai to Finnish consumers and companies, it's no longer linked to the car itself. We can be ready to deliver cars to customers in a time frame of around 12 months from today. And we are confident that the product can be priced significantly lower than a battery electric vehicle of equivalent size and range, even without any further incentives, which of course would be welcome. But I think what we need are two types of partners in order to take this step. One is of course customers, but this we will work on actively by ourselves, and I'm confident that there is already interest in the market for the vehicles. But secondly, is obviously refueling stations and refueling partners. And this is an area where we as a Toyota do not have solutions of our own to bring to the market and rely on finding a partner network or a network of partners to support our first customers and vehicles. So that is probably the most critical question of all. But other than that, Toyota is basically ready to enter the Finnish market.
Thank you. Tapio Korpeinen raised a hand. Tapio, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to build on the point that Markus made about competitiveness, that obviously, let's say the Finnish industries, they have made sort of roadmaps to decarbonize. That requires investment in Finland, and of course, that means that Finland needs to be competitive to attract all that industrial investment to sort of turn the tide from what we have seen during the past 10 years or so, and that could be another seminar in itself. But then coming back to hydrogen, I think we do need sort of industrial scale use cases here in Finland if we want to, in a sense, have impact. And whether it's about producing of hydrogen or whether it's about, again, industrial sort of decarbonization of industrial processes. Obviously, we are working on some cases on our part, but I think that could be an area to sort of join forces, perhaps get some support to kind of turn the tide in terms of the investments to scale up in industrial scale.
Thank you. I think we had Johanna and then Markus. Johanna, go ahead.
Just a comment that this morning I was listening to the news before we started this webinar, and there was Jukka Leskela from energy industry explaining how much actually energy industry has totally already reduced emission during the some past years, and there's of course that was related to the discussion about the EU targets that is now under discussion for 2030. And I guess that this also goes to Tapio's comment that I think here in Finland we should definitely think about where to start and what are the sectors that we first would take into this discussion and dialogue around the hydrogen. If we really think about our power generation here in Nordics, Finland and Nordics together, I think there is the renewables are there already. So, but what are the sectors that we actually need to now more or less focus, and where can we start with this hydrogen cooperation with the companies, and I guess that with the countries. I'm still hoping and expecting that in the Nordics one day we actually are able to cooperate on the country level as well and have a formal view that what can we here in Nordics do jointly. But I think that it's quite important that we have a kind of like a view where to start and where this hydrogen could play as soon as possible the biggest role with the most cost efficient way.
Thank you, Johanna. Markus, Rauramo, go ahead, and then I think Esko would like to say a comment, but Markus, go first.
Okay, I'll take a quick comment. So, putting the big hat on, thinking what role could we have in the hydrogen itself. Germany has said that in 2030 it will need 100 terawatt hours of clean hydrogen. That's more than the Finnish electricity consumption, but they can only produce 15 of it domestically. So the rest has to come from somewhere else. Well, where does gas come from? It comes from Russia, comes from Middle East, comes from North Africa, comes as LNG, the North Sea. For hydrogen, what is needed is renewable energy. That needs a lot of space. We have space. To produce hydrogen, you need the renewable energy and you need clean water. We have that as well. Johanna mentioned the point about methanization, and that's something, of course, we know already how to do. So we could combine our clean sources of CO2 like the forest industry. So combine the clean hydrogen, combine the clean CO2, and create methane. Question is that would we have such volumes that could be transported via pipeline from the Nordics? And the last point there is that that pipeline, let's say a big gas pipeline that goes in the bottom of the Baltic Sea today, is almost 100 times bigger than a 1 gigawatt electricity transmission line in its capacity to transport energy. So synthetic hydrogen, synthetic methane pipeline, that could be something we should think about for the coming years.
Thank you. And let's see, Esko, you had a comment.
Yeah, first, I think timing is extremely important when doing this kind of transformation. You cannot be too early, but even bigger problem is if you are too late. And I assume that timing is now perfect. And I think good evidence of that is that Gazprom in Russia decided to start invest in hydrogen. And it's telling very impressive story. They understand what is going to happen in the future, and they have to be in the game if they want to survive in the business. And secondly, if you look at this environmental story or sustainability story, we have seen this Act 1 in Finland, and we have been rather good in that. So transformation to renewables has been rather impressive in Finland. We have been good in that. We have created a lot of comparative advantages in that, a lot of new business opportunities. Now we are moving to Act 2. And I think in this Act 2, hydrogen can play a major role. And finally, I will return back to this ecosystem issue. I think what business and government should do together in Finland and rapidly is to analyze what are our assets, what are our weaknesses, and to make certain kind of strategic view, what are the next steps to be done. And finally, energy sector has not been big investor in R&D. Typically, energy companies are investing less than 1%, 0.5% of revenues into R&D. I think this mindset has to be changed, and the energy sector has to be bigger investor in R&D in the future, and governments should support that. And I think timing for that kind of change is perfect as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're starting to run out of time, but the Finnish government is currently planning its climate and energy strategy, I believe, to be published next fall, and they have said that hydrogen would be part of that strategy. Now, I think our report and this discussion here strongly advises that we should have a specific hydrogen-related plan for Finland, so we'll see if that continues. Of course, the European Union green stimulus funds are coming. We'll see how those will be distributed. We have 2 minutes. I wanted to ask Markus, you wrote recently on a blog post that you had the chance to visit virtually Uniper's hydrogen plant in Germany, and you find it very inspiring. Tell us what was inspiring about it.
Yeah, it just reminded me so much of my first visits to Rajasthan to our solar plant. So the Falkenhagen electrolysis plant is in the single-digit megawatt scale, and we have actually worked there now for almost 10 years, both producing hydrogen and then now methanizing it as well. So we have been actually injecting hydrogen and synthetic methane into the gas grid. So the inspiration was that now I have seen that this can be done. The question is now how do we scale that up, and that's really inspiring. But see the people, how happy they are, how proud they are doing the things. Now it's for us really to scale it up and invest and take the next steps.
Thank you very much, Markus. Thank you to all our panelists, special guest stars, Esko and Jorma Ollila, and thank you to the audience for following this discussion. Let the discussion continue, and as I mentioned earlier, you can find the report that we have done underneath the agenda below the streaming window. And of course, Nordic West office is more than happy to provide them for anybody who would like to have one. Thank you very much.